The clicking of high heels echoes through a dimly lit warehouse as a woman in a sleek business suit strides confidently past rows of bound and unconscious Mafia members. A single red USB drive glints in her hand, while behind her, millions in dirty money burns in carefully orchestrated flames. The year is 2024, and what started as a simple kidnapping is about to become the biggest mistake the Rosetti crime family has ever made. Dawn breaks over the bustling streets of downtown Chicago. The morning routine of Rebecca Chen, a petite 28-year-old Asian-American woman, begins like clockwork. Her delicate hands move with practiced efficiency as she arranges luxury handbags in the display window of Mason & Pierce, one of the city's most exclusive boutiques. The store's pristine interior is a testament to precision and order, much like Rebecca herself, whose immaculate appearance and quiet competence have made her the favorite of the store's wealthy clientele. Through the store's floor-to-ceiling windows, early morning sunlight illuminates the elegant space, catching on the subtle gold name tag that reads, Assistant Manager. Behind her desk, partially hidden from customer view, sits a framed diploma from MIT in applied mathematics, gathering dust, a relic of a life path abandoned 3 years ago for reasons she never discusses. Next to it, a small silver medal from an international chess championship peeks out from behind a designer catalog, both items most visitors mistake for simple decorations. The boutique's security cameras capture Rebecca's daily routine with mechanical precision. Her movements are efficient, almost algorithmic, as she checks inventory and prepares the store for opening. The only irregularity in her precise routine is a tendency to reorganize the store's layout every few weeks, creating what she calls optimal flow patterns, a quirk that amuses her co-workers but consistently increases sales. Her only companion, during these early morning hours, is the store's security guard, James Murphy, a retired beat cop who treats the morning handover like a military operation. The guard's dedication shows in his alert posture and watchful eyes, though few notice how Rebecca has subtly repositioned every security mirror in the store to create interlocking fields of view, a fact James appreciates without fully understanding its mathematical elegance. In Chicago's luxury retail circle, Rebecca is known simply as the Wizard of Mason & Pierce, a sales associate with an uncanny ability to match clients with exactly what they need, often before they know they need it. Her recommendations are treated like algorithm-generated prophecies, and her customer retention rate is something of a legend among the city's high-end retailers. Local store managers speak of her in hushed tones, claiming she can predict fashion trends with almost mathematical precision, though few have heard her speak more than a few carefully chosen words at industry events. The boutique itself is a masterpiece of subtle calculation. Under Rebecca's influence, every display, every mirror, every path through the store has been carefully optimized. The security system, which she personally reviews each month, is state-of-the-art, though her suggestions for improvements often leave the security company's technicians scratching their heads at their mathematical complexity. Today, like every day, Rebecca works with methodical precision, her slender fingers flying over the store's inventory system as she inputs data patterns that only she seems to fully grasp. At the local coffee shop, Marco's Sarah Williams serves her the same breakfast she's ordered for the past 3 years, green tea and a blueberry scone. She's one of the few people who've managed to glimpse beneath Rebecca's carefully composed exterior, even if just barely. The cafe, a warm refuge from Chicago's autumn chill, has become part of her morning algorithm. Today, however, Sarah notices something different in her demeanor, a slight tension in her usual fluid movements. Just tired from inventory, Rebecca replies, her voice soft and measured, but her eyes scan the cafe with unusual intensity, noting 2 unfamiliar faces at the counter, muscular men in expensive suits who seem out of place in the artsy neighborhood. They carry themselves with practiced casualness, their jacket pockets heavy with what she instantly calculates as the weight of concealed weapons. Back at the boutique, Rebecca receives an unexpected text from her estranged brother Alex, a former programmer for a major tech company. Their conversation is terse, clinical. He's worried about recent news reports of high-profile kidnappings targeting Asian Americans in the business district. The Golden Dragon Syndicate, they're called. Rebecca assures him she's fine, though her free hand unconsciously moves to the silver chess medal, her fingers tracing the engraved pattern that most would dismiss as decorative, but actually contains a coded message about probability matrices. Through the window, she spots a black SUV passing the store for the third time in an hour, its tinted windows concealing the occupants. Rebecca's mind automatically calculates the statistical improbability of the same vehicle appearing at precise 18-minute intervals. She begins typing into her phone, not a text, but a series of numbers that would appear meaningless to anyone else, coordinates, probabilities, and pattern analyses that she's been quietly logging for the past week. A long-dormant part of her mind, the part that once created unbreakable encryption algorithms, begins to whir to life. The game is about to begin, and Rebecca Chen, the quiet store clerk with the dusty MIT diploma, allows herself a small, barely perceptible smile. Some people count inventory, but she's always counted possibilities, calculated variables, mapped the mathematics of human behavior. And now someone is about to learn why she was once known in certain circles as the calculator. The vehicle passes again, right on schedule, and Rebecca's fingers dance across her phone's screen, setting in motion a sequence of events that will transform the quiet streets of Chicago's Gold Coast into a battlefield of the mind, not with bullets or bombs, but with probability, pattern recognition, and the pure, elegant violence of mathematical precision. Through the boutique's window, morning light glints off the geometric patterns of designer handbags, creating shadows that dance across Rebecca's workspace like equations written in light. The morning clientele begins to filter in, Chicago's elite seeking their daily dose of luxury. Mrs. Vanderhoff, wife of a prominent hedge fund manager, lingers at the scarf display, her manicured fingers trailing over silk patterns that Rebecca has arranged in a sequence that subtly echoes the Fibonacci spiral. Rebecca moves through the store with practiced grace, her mind constantly running calculations. She notices everything, the slight bulge of a concealed weapon beneath a customer's designer jacket, the way the men in the black SUV maintain precise intervals in their surveillance, the nearly imperceptible cameras recently installed in the building across the street. Each observation becomes a variable in an ever-expanding equation. The store's new security system, installed last month at her subtle suggestion, records everything in high-definition clarity. The camera's blind spots, which the installation team assured her were unavoidable, are exactly where she calculated they should be. Every mirror, every polished surface, creates redundant angles of surveillance, a complex geometric web of visibility that only she fully comprehends. In the back office, Rebecca reviews the morning's inventory on dual monitors. To her co-workers, it appears to be simple stock management, but hidden within the spreadsheets are complex algorithms tracking patterns of customer behavior, security patrol rotations, and the movements of several vehicles that have been circling the block with statistical improbability. Her phone buzzes with a text from Sarah at the coffee shop. "Those men you noticed? They're asking questions about you. Careful, Becca." Rebecca's fingers hover over the keyboard, her mind calculating response probabilities. She texts back a simple "thank you," while her other hand reaches beneath her desk, retrieving a small notebook filled with what appears to be random numbers, a habit her co-workers attribute to obsessive bookkeeping. At precisely 10:43 a.m., Victoria Pierce, the boutique's owner, arrives for her weekly inspection. The elegant woman in her 50s sweeps through the store like royalty, but her eyes hold a sharp intelligence that recognized Rebecca's potential 3 years ago. "The numbers are exceptional this quarter," Victoria notes, studying the sales reports. "Your reorganization strategies are remarkable." "Pattern recognition is simply mathematics," Rebecca replies softly, her first words of the day. Victoria smiles, unaware that her prized employee's pattern recognition extends far beyond retail analytics. As they talk, Rebecca watches the reflection in Victoria's glasses, Another black SUV passing by, different from the first, but maintaining the same precise timing. The probability of coincidence has now dropped below 0. Rower 1%. In the store's private viewing room, Rebecca helps a client select a watch, her suggestions seeming almost prescient. The client, a neurosurgeon with exacting tastes, marvels at her ability to anticipate his preferences. He doesn't notice how she positions herself to maintain clear sight lines to all entry points, or how her recommendation places him at exactly the right angle to be captured by the security cameras. During her lunch break, Rebecca sits in the small park across from the boutique, apparently absorbed in a book of Sudoku puzzles. In reality, she's mapping the movements of everyone around. Calculating vectors, timing patterns, identifying the mathematical signatures of surveillance. 3 more men in expensive suits have appeared at strategic points around the park, their positions forming a perfect triangulation pattern. Her phone buzzes again. This time it's a news alert about another kidnapping in the business district. The victim, like the others, was Asian American, professionally successful, with access to sensitive information or systems. Rebecca's mind automatically overlays this data point onto her existing probability matrix. The pattern is clear now. The Golden Dragon Syndicate isn't just kidnapping random targets. They're following a specific algorithm. Back in the store, Rebecca begins her afternoon routine with one subtle change. She activates an encrypted program on her phone, something she coded years ago when she worked on projects she never discusses. The program begins mapping local CCTV cameras, creating a digital mesh of surveillance that extends far beyond the boutique's boundaries. A young woman enters the store, browsing handbags with practiced casualness. Rebecca's trained eye notices the slight bulge of a shoulder holster under her Chanel jacket, the way she cases exit points with professional precision. "Looking for anything specific?" Rebecca asks, her voice modulated to project helpful retail associate while her mind calculates combat probabilities. "Just browsing," the woman replies, her accent placing her origins in Eastern Europe with 92% probability. Their eyes meet briefly in one of the store's many mirrors, a moment of mutual recognition between predators. Rebecca maintains her helpful smile, but her fingers slip into her pocket, pressing a sequence of numbers into her phone that will activate certain contingency protocols. As afternoon shadows lengthen across the store's marble floors, Rebecca watches Victoria leave for the day, her driver holding the door of her Mercedes. The surveillance vehicles have maintained their pattern, but new variables have entered the equation. More men in suits, positioned at key intersections, their movements suggesting military or intelligence training. In the back office, Rebecca pulls up the boutique's architectural plans on her computer, overlaying them with city utility maps. Her fingers trace paths through the urban maze, calculating escape routes, choke points, and defensive positions. To anyone glancing over her shoulder, it would appear she's reviewing the store's layout for next month's inventory. James, the security guard, stops by her desk before his shift change. "Anything unusual today, Miss Chen?" he asks, following their daily routine. "Nothing significant," she replies, but her eyes flick meaningfully to the security monitor showing the increasing number of suspicious vehicles outside. James nods slightly. He may not understand the mathematics of her methods, but years of police work have taught him to trust her instincts. As evening approaches, Rebecca begins her closing routine, each action precise and measured. She knows the probability of an imminent move against her has reached critical threshold. The equation is complete, all variables accounted for. Now, it's just a matter of waiting to see which solution the Golden Dragon Syndicate will choose, and how badly they'll regret underestimating a simple store clerk who once wrote algorithms for the NSA's quantum encryption program. That afternoon, young Lily Zhang brings in a designer bag for repair, her grandmother's cherished Birkin with a damaged strap. The teenager's enthusiasm for luxury fashion reminds Rebecca of her own early fascination with patterns and probabilities. As Rebecca examines the bag, Lily notices something unusual on Rebecca's computer screen. Lines of code hidden behind the inventory software, complex algorithms that look nothing like retail management systems. Before Lily can ask about it, Rebecca smoothly minimizes the window, her movement deliberate and final. "Should be ready by Thursday," she says, effectively ending any potential questions. Lily nods, sensing the shift in atmosphere, and heads out into the autumn afternoon. Through the window, Rebecca watches as the girl passes one of the surveillance vehicles, its occupants too focused on the boutique to notice how their predictable patterns have already revealed their tactical approach. Later, as Rebecca performs her evening security check, a ritual she's maintained since her first day at the store, she spots fresh tire marks in the alley behind the boutique. The marks show a vehicle's weight distribution suggesting armored modifications. Her hand unconsciously moves to her phone, where a complex encryption program runs silently beneath its innocent-looking interface. In the store's security office, she reviews the day's footage with James before his shift ends. Her eyes catch subtle movements in the background, men changing positions, communications equipment being set up in the building across the street. Their deployment pattern suggests they're establishing a surveillance perimeter, but their approach has a critical flaw. They're treating this as a standard operation, assuming their target is nothing more than a store clerk with an impressive sales record. "Miss Chen," James says, his voice carrying years of police instinct. "Those guys out there, they're not your average troublemakers. Maybe we should call in some extra security." Rebecca gives him a small smile, appreciating his concern, while knowing that additional security would only add more variables to an already complex equation. "Sometimes the best defense is being underestimated, James," she replies cryptically. As twilight settles over Chicago's Gold Coast, Rebecca notices Sarah from the coffee shop hurrying toward the boutique, her expression worried. The cafe owner slips inside just before closing time, glancing nervously over her shoulder. "Those men from this morning," she says in a hushed voice. "They were asking about your schedule, your habits. One of them had a photo of you from your MIT days." Rebecca's mind races through probability calculations. If they have access to her university records, they've likely discovered her connection to Project Oracle, the classified algorithm she developed for predicting complex system behaviors. What they don't know is that the algorithm was just a cover for something far more sophisticated. She guides Sarah to the back office, ostensibly to show her a new collection of scarves. "If anything happens," Rebecca says quietly, pressing a small data card into her friend's hand, "give this to Detective Michael Torres at the 18th Precinct. Don't use your phone. Don't trust anyone else." Sarah nods, understanding the gravity of the moment, even if she doesn't grasp its full implications. That evening, Rebecca's brother, Alex, calls again, his voice tense. "Sis, something's wrong. I've been monitoring dark web chatter. The Golden Dragon Syndicate. They're not just criminals. They're backed by someone bigger. They're looking for people with specific skills, people who worked on certain projects." She can hear him typing furiously in the background. "Your old project at MIT, the one you never talk about. They're asking about it." Rebecca moves to her computer, pulls up what appears to be an inventory spreadsheet. Hidden within the cells are encrypted communications with her own network of contacts. Former colleagues from her classified work, other brilliant minds who chose to disappear into ordinary lives. The messages confirm Alex's warning. Someone is systematically tracking down everyone connected to Project Oracle. "Stay safe, Alex," she says, ending the call. Through her window, she spots two more SUVs taking positions at opposite ends of the street. Their tactical deployment is professional, methodical. Exactly the kind of predictable pattern her algorithms were designed to exploit. She begins typing rapidly, not into her phone this time, but into a hidden terminal beneath her desk. The boutique's lights dim automatically as closing time approaches. Rebecca performs her usual closing routine, but with subtle variations that would only be noticeable to someone who had studied her patterns as thoroughly as she studied theirs. She positions certain handbags slightly differently, adjusts mirrors by fractions of degrees, preparing the store's geometry for what's coming. In the security office, she makes one final check of the cameras. The Golden Dragon Syndicate's men are in position, their deployment following standard special operations protocols. She allows herself a small smile. They've arranged themselves exactly as her probability matrices predicted, creating exploitable gaps in their coverage. Rebecca changes out of her designer work outfit into more practical clothing concealed in her office. The outfit appears ordinary, but incorporates cutting-edge smart fabric, another remnant of her classified past. She sends one last encrypted message to her network, initiating contingency protocols years in the making. As night falls over Chicago, Rebecca Chen, the quiet store clerk with the mathematical mind, feels the weight of her past settling back onto her shoulders. Tomorrow she'll go through the motions of normal life one last time, but tonight, she prepares. Her hands move through familiar sequences on her computer, each command a reminder of skills that, like her algorithms, have been carefully preserved, waiting for the moment they'd be needed again. The streets outside grow quiet, but Rebecca's mind whirs with calculations, mapping every possibility, every variable, every potential outcome. The Golden Dragon Syndicate is about to learn the hard way that in the right hands, mathematics can be deadlier than any weapon, and some people are dangerous precisely because they appear harmless. The next morning arrives with an unusual stillness that sets off immediate alarms in Rebecca's precisely calibrated mind. The normal morning traffic patterns have shifted. Fewer civilian vehicles, strategic gaps in pedestrian flow that suggest controlled access points. The air feels charged with anticipation, like the moment before a complex equation resolves itself. Rebecca notes each anomaly as she walks to Marco's. The missing homeless man who usually sleeps in the alley, the new maintenance van parked at an angle that provides perfect coverage of the street, the slight bulge of tactical gear visible beneath the jacket of a man pretending to read a newspaper. Her mind automatically calculates satellite positions based on the time, signal interference. Patterns would be minimal for the next 4 hours. Inside the cafe, Sarah's hands shake slightly as she serves Rebecca's usual green tea. The morning rush is conspicuously absent, replaced by 4 men strategically positioned around the space. Rebecca recognizes their type immediately. Special. Operations, likely former military, their casual poses betrayed by the mathematical precision of their positioning. "Your tea's a bit strong today," Sarah says quietly, their predetermined code for surveillance presence. Rebecca nods almost imperceptibly, her eyes scanning the cafe with retail-trained pleasantness, while her mind maps vectors and calculates probabilities. One of the men, positioned by the window with a clear line of sight to both entrances, watches her with practiced indifference. Through the cafe's window, she spots Victoria Pierce's Mercedes arriving at the boutique early. Unusual for her boss, who typically maintains strict routines. The driver is different today, his posture suggesting military training rather than chauffeur school. Rebecca's phone buzzes, an alert from one of her hidden programs detecting unauthorized access. Attempts on the store's security system. As Rebecca walks back to the boutique, she notes how the surveillance teams have shifted their positions, maintaining optimal coverage while trying to appear random. Their movements follow standard special operations protocols, which makes them predictable to someone who once wrote algorithms to detect such patterns. She counts 12 operatives now, their positions forming a mathematical net designed to control all potential escape routes. Inside the boutique, Victoria is waiting in the office, her usual confident demeanor slightly off. "Rebecca, dear," she begins, her voice carefully modulated. "Some gentlemen from the insurance company need to review our security protocols. They have some concerns about our digital infrastructure." Behind her, 2 men in expensive suits enter the office. Their suits are well-tailored, but cut to accommodate shoulder holsters. "Of course," Rebecca replies, her voice the perfect blend of helpful retail manager and technological incompetence. She watches their reflections in her darkened computer screen, noting how they position themselves to block both exits. The probability of violence within the next hour has just increased to 78%. Miss Chen, the taller man says, his accent placing him as Eastern European with 94% probability. We understand you have some expertise in loss prevention algorithms. We'd like to discuss your methods. His partner moves slightly, adjusting his position to maintain optimal coverage of the room. Rebecca recognizes the movement. Standard close protection service techniques. I just follow the corporate protocols, she responds, allowing a slight tremor in her voice. Let them think she's nervous, unaware. Her hand moves to adjust a display screen, simultaneously activating a hidden program that begins encrypting and transferring critical files through a quantum-encrypted channel she'd established years ago. Victoria excuses herself, guilt flickering across her face momentarily. As she leaves, Rebecca calculates a 96% probability that they're threatening her family. Standard procedure for organizations like the Golden Dragon Syndicate. She makes a mental note to ensure Victoria and her children receive certain protected account numbers once this is over. The men begin asking questions about the store's security systems, their queries becoming increasingly specific about pattern, recognition algorithms, and predictive modeling. Rebecca provides carefully crafted answers, each one designed to reinforce their assumption that her retail work is unconnected to her past at MIT. Through the window, she spots more teams taking position around the building. Their deployment pattern suggests they're preparing for an extraction operation. They plan to take her today. Her mind races through contingencies, calculating optimal response scenarios while maintaining her facade of helpful compliance. James arrives for his shift, immediately sensing the tension. His hand moves instinctively toward his weapon, but Rebecca gives him a subtle hand signal, one of many they'd established over years of working together. Stand down. Wait. The security guard nods almost imperceptibly, moving to his station, while keeping the suited men in his peripheral vision. Miss Chen, the taller man says finally, we'd like you to come with us to review some security footage at our main office. Just a formality. His tone is pleasant, but leaves no room for refusal. Through the store's mirrors, Rebecca spots 3 more teams moving into position outside. Of course, she replies, reaching for her purse. Let me just close out the register. Her hand moves toward the computer, executing a series of commands masked as routine end-of-day procedures. Throughout the store, microscopic sensors she'd installed months ago begin gathering data. Heat signatures, movement patterns, electronic emissions from their communication devices. The men escort her toward the door, maintaining professional courtesy while boxing her in with practiced efficiency. They believe they're in control, executing a well-planned extraction of an unsuspecting target. They don't realize that every step they take follows paths she predicted. Every position they assume was calculated months ago. Rebecca Chen, the quiet store clerk with the mathematical mind, allows herself to be led toward their waiting vehicle. In her head, complex algorithms run through final probability calculations. The Golden Dragon Syndicate is about to learn that true power lies not in force, but in understanding the mathematical patterns that govern all human behavior, and she's had years to study their patterns. As Rebecca is escorted toward the unmarked SUV parked at the boutique's service entrance, her mind calculates trajectories, timing sequences, and behavioral patterns. The 2 men flanking her maintain precise distances, their movements betraying extensive close protection training. Through the store's reflection, she spots 3 more vehicles taking position at strategic points along the street. Just a routine security consultation, the taller man says smoothly as he opens the SUV's door. Rebecca notes the vehicle's modifications: reinforced panels, run-flat tires, and subtle communications equipment. More importantly, she notices the driver's slight hesitation when glancing at his side mirror. He's watching for something specific. Inside the boutique, James maintains his position at the security desk, his expression neutral, but his hand near his weapon. Through carefully positioned mirrors, Rebecca catches his eye one last time. The security guard nods almost imperceptibly. He remembers their contingency protocols. In exactly 17 minutes, he'll make a very specific phone call. The SUV's interior is pristine. professionally modified for operations. As Rebecca slides into the back seat, she appears to stumble slightly, her hand brushing against the part door panel. In that brief moment, she places a microscopic device, one of many she's developed over the years. The men don't notice. They're too focused on maintaining their practice protocol. "Your work at Mason & Pierce has been impressive," the taller man says as they pull away from the curb. "Particularly your loss prevention algorithms. Very innovative." His partner maintains a professional silence, but his eyes constantly scan their surroundings. Rebecca recognizes the technique. She'd written papers on surveillance methodology during her classified years. Through the tinted windows, she watches their route carefully. They're taking a complex path designed to detect surveillance, but their choices follow standard counterintelligence protocols. Predictable. Her phone, appearing to be off, silently maps their movement patterns, comparing them to her predicted models. "The Golden Dragon Syndicate," Rebecca says quietly, surprising both men. "Your tactical deployment suggests military training, but your pattern recognition is outdated." She speaks with the calm precision of someone stating mathematical facts. The men exchange quick glances. This isn't following their expected script. "We are merely insurance consultants," the taller man replies smoothly, but his hand has moved closer to his concealed weapon. Rebecca allows herself a small smile. In her head, she's already calculating the exact moment when their communications will fail. They turn onto Lower Wacker Drive, Chicago's underground street system. The SUV's driver takes them deeper into the multi-level network of service roads and loading docks, a perfect location for what they have planned: minimal surveillance, controlled access points, multiple escape routes. "Your organization has been tracking former Project Oracle team members," Rebecca continues, her voice still calm. "An elegant approach, using the local criminal syndicates as cover. But you made a critical error in your calculations." The men's postures shift slightly, defensive, ready for action. They're no longer dealing with a simple store clerk. "And what error would that be?" the taller man asks, his accent becoming more pronounced. Rebecca notes how their vehicle has synchronized with two others that have joined their convoy. Standard extraction protocol. "You assumed I was hiding," she replies. "But mathematicians understand that the best way to hide a pattern is to place it in plain sight. I wasn't hiding from you. I was waiting for you to follow the probability matrices to their logical conclusion." Her words hang in the air as understanding begins to dawn on their faces. The SUV makes another turn, descending to the lowest level of Wacker Drive. The concrete walls and pillars create a maze-like environment, carefully maintained shadows broken only by sparse fluorescent lighting. Their convoy has grown to 4 vehicles now, moving with practiced precision. Rebecca glances at her watch, a designer piece that looks perfectly suited for a luxury boutique manager. The men don't realize it's running a quantum decryption program she designed years ago. 15 seconds until their communications go dark. "Your team has been monitoring me for weeks," she continues, "studying my patterns, my routines. But you never asked yourselves why those patterns were so easy to predict, so perfect in their mathematical precision." The taller man's hand moves decisively toward his weapon now, but Rebecca remains perfectly still. The convoy approaches a particular section of the underground complex, where the concrete walls are slightly darker, the shadows deeper. Rebecca's fingers brush her phone screen in what appears to be a nervous gesture. In reality, she's activating protocols years in the making. "You see," she says, her voice taking on a lecturer's tone, "Project Oracle wasn't about predicting patterns. It was about creating them. About understanding how human beings, even highly trained operatives, will follow predictable behavioral matrices when properly guided. The men are fully alert now. Their training telling them something is wrong, but they can't quite grasp what." "And right now," Rebecca concludes, "you're exactly where my algorithms predicted you would be." As if on cue, their convoy enters a particular stretch of underground road. The perfect spot, calculated years ago, where radio signals behave in very specific ways. Suddenly, every electronic device in their vehicles dies simultaneously. Communications, engine control units, even their backup systems, all rendered useless by a precisely calibrated electromagnetic pulse that affects only this small section of the underground complex. The convoy rolls to a stop in perfect synchronization, just as Rebecca's mathematics predicted they would. In the sudden darkness, illuminated only by emergency lighting, Rebecca Chen allows herself another small smile. The men reach for their weapons, but she knows they're already too late. The real question isn't how she'll escape. That was calculated long ago. The real question is how much of their operation she'll dismantle before they realize that kidnapping, a mathematician, was the worst equation they could have chosen to solve. In the darkness of Lower Wacker Drive, Rebecca moves with calculated precision as chaos erupts around her. The men in the SUV reach for weapons that won't fire. Their electronic firing pins disabled by the same pulse that killed their vehicles. The taller man lunges for her, but she's already shifted her position by exactly 37 degrees, the optimal angle to utilize the vehicle's confined space against a larger opponent. "What did you do?" he demands, his accent becoming more pronounced. With stress, emergency lights cast strange shadows through the windows, creating a strobe effect that her mind automatically converts into tactical advantages. The driver attempts to restart the SUV, the engine clicking uselessly. "Applied mathematics," Rebecca replies calmly, her hands folded in her lap. "Did you know that urban infrastructure creates very specific electromagnetic wave patterns, particularly in underground structures with certain concrete compositions?" Through the windshield, she watches the other vehicle's occupants emerging, their movements exactly matching her predicted response patterns. Overhead, the emergency lighting system begins to malfunction in what appears to be random sequences. But nothing in Rebecca's world is random. Each flutter of darkness is precisely timed, creating disorientation patterns she'd calculated months ago. The men's special operations training works against them now. Their responses are too practiced, too predictable. "You have exactly 47 seconds, Rebecca announces, checking her watch, before the secondary protocols activate. The taller man's partner reaches for her, but she's already moving. Her seemingly delicate frame flows through a series of precise movements, not martial arts, but pure mathematical efficiency. Every angle, every point of contact calculated for maximum effect with minimum energy expenditure. Outside the SUV, more operatives approach with tactical precision. Rebecca counts 12 men, their positions forming standard containment patterns. They don't realize they're actually arranging themselves exactly as her algorithms predicted. They would. In their earpieces, their encrypted communications are being systematically replaced by a complex algorithm she designed, one that will slowly feed them contradictory tactical information. "The Golden Dragon Syndicate," Rebecca continues, her voice carrying the same tone she uses to explain luxury handbag features, "is actually a fascinating study in behavioral mathematics. Your operations follow such perfect patterns, almost too perfect." She watches understanding dawn in the taller man's eyes. They haven't been hunting her. She's been gathering data on them. A new sound echoes through the underground complex. Police sirens, but with a specific pattern. James has made his call right on schedule. But these aren't regular police. Units responding. Through the concrete pillars, Rebecca spots the first members of an FBI tactical team taking position. Their arrival time matches her calculations to within 1-3 seconds. "Your organization has been testing experimental psychological conditioning techniques," Rebecca explains, almost academically, "using modified behavior prediction algorithms, my algorithms, but you never understood what Project Oracle really was." The taller man's expression shifts from confidence to uncertainty. Above them, the emergency lights create increasingly complex patterns. Through the SUV's windows, Rebecca watches the Golden Dragon operatives begin to move erratically, their coordinated tactics falling apart as her counter-algorithms take effect. Their earpieces now feed them carefully calculated commands, each one designed to exploit their conditioned responses. The human mind, she continues, follows mathematical patterns, even in chaos, especially in chaos. Project Oracle wasn't about predicting behavior. It was about understanding how to reshape it. She reaches into her purse, removing what appears to be a compact mirror. The men tense, but she simply opens it, checking her reflection. The mirror's surface contains a micro-LED display, showing tactical data only she can see. The FBI team's deployment is creating a precisely calculated containment grid. The Golden Dragon operatives, their tactical coordination now thoroughly disrupted, are responding exactly as her behavioral matrices predicted. Each movement, each decision, follows patterns she mapped out years ago. Your organization stole fragments of Project Oracle's code, Rebecca explains, her voice taking on a slightly disappointed tone. But you never realized the code itself was designed to be stolen. Every implementation created new behavioral patterns that fed back into the main algorithm. You've been helping me map your entire operation since the day you started using it. The taller man moves suddenly, his training overriding his confusion. But Rebecca is already sliding across the seat, her movement a perfect tangent to his attack vector. His momentum carries him forward as the SUV's door opens at precisely the right moment. Outside, the chaos has reached its calculated peak. The FBI team approaching isn't just any tactical unit, she continues, stepping out of the vehicle with the same precise movements she uses to navigate the boutique's aisles. They're Section 7, the same unit that originally commissioned Project Oracle. And they're very interested in the experimental conditioning programs your organization has been running. In the growing chaos, Rebecca stands perfectly still, a calm center in a mathematical storm of her own creation. The Golden Dragon operatives find themselves responding to phantom commands, their carefully trained tactics turning into a choreographed dance of confusion. Each movement brings them closer to the FBI team's containment positions, though they don't realize they're being herded. "Did you really think," she asks the taller man, who now stares at her with a mix of fear and dawning comprehension, that someone who wrote algorithms to predict and modify human behavior would actually be hiding in a luxury boutique? "I chose that location because it provided perfect sight lines of your organization's primary money laundering operation across the street." The final phase of her plan begins to unfold as FBI agents emerge from multiple access points. The Golden Dragon operatives, their tactical coordination completely shattered by her counter-algorithms, find themselves smoothly contained and captured. Each arrest follows patterns Rebecca calculated months ago, probabilities resolving into certainties, with mathematical precision. Through the emergency lighting of Lower Wacker Drive, Rebecca watches as Section 7's tactical teams systematically neutralize the Golden Dragon operatives. Each arrest follows probability matrices she'd calculated months ago, the agents unknowingly, moving along vectors she'd precisely mapped. The taller man, now in handcuffs, stares at her with a mixture of realization and disbelief. "Your organization's mistake," Rebecca explains, adjusting her designer watch, "wasn't finding me. It was not understanding what you found." She removes a small quantum encryption device from her purse. It looks like an ordinary power bank. Project Oracle was never meant to be a predictive algorithm. It was a honeypot, designed to attract exactly the kind of attention you gave it. Special Agent Diana Torres emerges from the shadows, her tactical gear a sharp contrast to Rebecca's boutique manager attire. "Target secured," she reports into her comm unit, then turns to Rebecca with a professional nod. "Dr. Chen, the secondary location is being raided now. Your calculations were perfect as usual." The underground complex now buzzes with activity as FBI teams process the scene. Rebecca's phone lights up with a series of encrypted messages, confirmations of simultaneous raids across Chicago. Each location had been identified through careful mathematical analysis of the Golden Dragon Syndicate's behavioral patterns. "The boutique's security cameras," the taller man says suddenly, understanding dawning in his eyes. "They weren't just monitoring the store. You were using them to map our entire operation." Rebecca allows herself a small smile. Every luxury purchase, every credit card transaction, created data points. Your money laundering operation across the street provided the perfect baseline for behavioral analysis. Through the concrete pillars, Rebecca spots more FBI teams arriving, their movements creating complex patterns that only she fully understands. Each agent's position has been calculated to maintain optimal tactical advantage while appearing random to any watching eyes. Your psychological conditioning program, Rebecca continues, her voice carrying the same tone she uses to explain the features of expensive handbags, was particularly interesting. Using modified versions of my algorithms to create predictable behavior patterns in your operatives. But you never asked yourself why those algorithms were so easy to modify. Sarah appears from behind an FBI tactical team, escorted by agents. In her hands, she carries the USB drive Rebecca had given her. The cafe's security cameras, Sarah says, a hint of pride in her voice. They were part of it too, weren't they? Rebecca nods. Every customer's movement, every transaction, had fed data into her behavioral mapping system. 3 years, the taller man says, realization continuing to dawn. You've been gathering data for 3 years. Rebecca shakes her head slightly. No, the Golden Dragon Syndicate has been gathering data for me. Every operation, every pattern, every response to stimuli, all of it feeding back into the real Project Oracle. Agent Torres gestures to her team, who begin leading the captured operatives away. Dr. Chen's algorithms identified 7 major criminal organizations using similar conditioning techniques, she explains professionally. The Golden Dragon Syndicate was just the first to take the bait. Through her quantum-encrypted phone, Rebecca receives confirmation of more raids: New York, Los Angeles, London. Each operation timed to exploit the behavioral patterns she'd spent years mapping. The taller man's eyes widen as he realizes the true scope of what's happening. The fascinating thing about human behavior, Rebecca says, watching the FBI teams, work is how it follows mathematical patterns, even in chaos. Your organization's attempts to create predictable operatives through psychological conditioning just made those patterns easier to exploit. James appears at the perimeter of the scene, still in his security guard uniform. He exchanges a knowing look with Rebecca. His years of playing the simple retired cop had provided invaluable cover for their operation. The store's going to need a new assistant manager, he says with a slight smile. Actually, Agent Torres interjects, we'll need to maintain Dr. Chen's cover a while longer. There are still several organizations using modified versions of the Oracle code, each one creating new behavioral patterns for us to analyze. Rebecca nods, already calculating probabilities for the next phase of operations. Sarah approaches, still processing everything she's witnessed. So, all those times, you rearranged the store's layout. Rebecca smiles. Every change created new customer flow patterns, providing baseline data for human behavioral analysis. The boutique was the perfect observation post. Luxury retail customers are remarkably consistent in their behaviors. Through the underground complex's emergency lighting, Rebecca watches as the last of the Golden Dragon operatives are led away. Each one moves according to patterns she'd predicted, their conditioned responses making them predictable even in defeat. Her phone continues to receive updates from raids around the world, each operation precisely timed to exploit the behavioral matrices she'd identified. Your organization believed it was using Project Oracle's algorithms to create controllable operatives, Rebecca explains to the taller man as he's led away. But those algorithms were designed to be stolen, to be modified. Each modification created new patterns that helped us map every organization using similar techniques. You weren't controlling behavior. You were helping us understand how to predict it. Agent Torres approaches with new tactical data on her tablet. The secondary site is secured. Your calculations about their record storage were correct. Everything was exactly where you said it would be. Rebecca nods, already running new probability calculations in her head. The Golden Dragon Syndicate's fall is just the first equation. in a much larger mathematical operation. As emergency vehicles arrive above ground, their lights creating complex patterns through the underground complex's ventilation grates, Rebecca Chen allows herself a moment of satisfaction. The quiet store clerk with the mathematical mind has just orchestrated one of the largest synchronized law enforcement operations in history, all through the power of applied behavioral mathematics. In the aftermath of the raid, Rebecca sits in a makeshift command center established in a secure section of Lower Wacker Drive. Multiple screens display real-time data from ongoing operations across the globe. Each raid follows precise mathematical patterns she'd calculated, targeting organizations that had adopted modified versions of the Oracle code. 17 successful operations in the last hour, Agent Torres reports, scrolling through updates on her tactical tablet. London, Dubai, Singapore, all hitting exactly when you predicted they would. Rebecca nods, her eyes tracking patterns in the data that only she can see. Her quantum encryption device continues to process behavioral matrices, identifying new targets. The psychological conditioning programs, the agent continues, they're more widespread than we initially thought. Each organization modified the Oracle code slightly differently, but they all follow the same basic patterns. Rebecca pulls up complex mathematical models on her secure laptop, showing how each modification created predictable behavioral signatures. Human beings seek patterns, Rebecca explains, her voice carrying the same patient tone she uses with difficult customers at the boutique. Even criminal organizations, by providing them with algorithms that seem to create predictable behavior, in their operatives, we gave them exactly what they wanted. They never questioned why the code was so easily modified. Through secure video feeds, they watch as more raids unfold across different time zones. Each operation precisely timed to exploit the behavioral patterns Rebecca had identified. The organization's own security protocols, influenced by their modified versions of the Oracle code, make them vulnerable to exactly this kind of coordinated action. Sarah, still processing her role in the operation, sits nearby nursing a cup of coffee from her cafe. All those times you were analyzing customer behavior at the boutique. Rebecca smiles. Luxury retail provides perfect baseline data for behavioral analysis. People shopping for high-end goods follow remarkably consistent patterns. It helped us identify anomalies in the Golden Dragon Syndicate's money laundering operations. James enters the command center, having changed from his security guard uniform into tactical gear that suits him far better. The store's surveillance data has been fully transferred to Section 7 servers, he reports. 3 years of behavioral mapping, all perfectly documented. His role as a simple retired cop had provided invaluable cover for their long-term operation. Rebecca's phone chimes with an encrypted alert. Her brother Alex's voice comes through, transmitted from a secure location. Sis, you need to see this. I'm detecting unusual data patterns in Southeast Asia. Some of these organizations are implementing fail-safe protocols we haven't seen before. On the main screen, Rebecca pulls up new behavioral matrices, her fingers flying over the keyboard, as she analyzes emerging patterns. The organizations are adapting, but even their adaptations follow mathematical principles she can predict. They're attempting to activate sleeper agents, she explains. Operatives conditioned using the earliest versions of their modified code. Agent Torres immediately begins coordinating with international teams. How long do we have? She asks. Rebecca studies the probability calculations displaying on her quantum encryption device. The behavioral patterns suggest they'll activate within the next 6 hours, but their conditioning makes them predictable. I'm sending coordinates now. Through the command center's windows, dawn begins to break over Chicago. Emergency vehicles still crowd the streets above, their lights creating complex patterns that Rebecca's mind automatically converts into tactical data. The city is waking up, unaware of the mathematical battle being fought in its underground depths. Victoria Pierce arrives, escorted by FBI agents. The boutique owner's elegant appearance seems out of place in the tactical environment, but her eyes show steel as she approaches Rebecca. My family? She asks simply. Secure, Rebecca assures her. The accounts I arranged will provide everything they need. Victoria nods, understanding now why her most capable employee had always seemed overqualified for retail management. The Golden Dragon Syndicate's conditioning program, Agent Torres says, reviewing new data. It wasn't just about creating predictable operatives. They were trying to develop something bigger. Rebecca nods, pulling up complex behavioral models on her screen. They were attempting to create a human network that could operate like a quantum computer, each conditioned operative acting as a qubit. But they never understood the full implications of the Oracle code. Sarah watches the screens in fascination. Is that why you chose the cafe as a monitoring position? All those patterns you were studying? Rebecca allows herself a small smile. Coffee shops are perfect for behavioral analysis. People are creatures of habit, especially in their morning routines. It helped us identify the Golden Dragon's surveillance teams immediately. They broke established patterns. New alerts flash across the screens as more raids begin in Asia. Rebecca's algorithms predict each response, each attempt at evasion. The organization's own conditioning programs make their reactions mathematically predictable. They thought they were creating perfect operatives, she explains, but they were actually making themselves vulnerable to precisely this kind of coordinated action. A secure video feed opens, showing a Section 7 tactical team in Singapore. They've just raided a facility containing servers full of conditioning program data. Dr. Chen, the team leader, reports. Everything is exactly where you said it would be. The behavioral matrices were perfect. Rebecca's quantum encryption device continues processing data, identifying new patterns in the organization's responses to the raids. Each reaction, each attempt at counteraction, provides more data for her algorithms to analyze. The mathematical web she's spent years weaving pulls tighter with each passing moment. As morning light filters through the ventilation, grates above, Rebecca Chen watches the operations unfold across multiple screens. The quiet store clerk who outsmarted some of the world's most dangerous organizations hasn't just dismantled their networks, she's revealed the fundamental mathematical patterns that govern human behavior itself. The secure command center in Lower Wacker Drive hums with activity as new data streams in from operations across the globe. Rebecca's eyes scan multiple screens, her mind automatically converting streams of information into behavioral matrices. A new pattern emerges, something subtle but significant in the way the targeted organizations are reacting to the raids. They're adapting faster than predicted, Rebecca announces, her fingers flying over her specialized keyboard. The quantum encryption device on her wrist pulses with incoming data. The conditioning programs are showing unexpected flexibility. Agent Torres immediately moves to her side, studying the complex mathematical models displaying on the main screen. These response patterns, Rebecca continues, highlighting specific data clusters. They're not just programmed reactions. The organizations have developed some form of distributed intelligence network through their conditioned operatives. She pulls up new behavioral matrices, showing how information is flowing through the criminal networks in ways that mimic quantum entanglement. Through secure feeds, they watch as raids in Tokyo and Seoul encounter unexpected resistance. The organization's operatives are displaying coordinated responses that shouldn't be possible given their isolated cells. It's like they're communicating without actually communicating, Agent Torres observes, her tactical experience recognizing the implications. Rebecca's brother Alex's voice comes through the encrypted channel again. Sis, I'm seeing similar patterns in their network traffic. It's like the modified Oracle code has evolved beyond its original parameters. The conditioning isn't just affecting individual operatives anymore, it's creating some kind of collective behavioral system. Sarah, still at Rebecca's side, notices a pattern in the cafe's customer data displayed on one of the smaller screens. Look at this, she points out. The way their surveillance teams moved through the neighborhood. It's almost like they were unconsciously coordinating with teams in other cities. The Oracle code was designed to map behavioral patterns, Rebecca explains, pulling up new mathematical models. But these organizations modified it to create predictable behavior in their operatives. What they didn't realize is that by doing so, they were actually creating a human quantum network, each conditioned operative acting as a node in a larger system. James returns from coordinating with ground teams, his expression grave. "We're getting reports of sleeper agents activating simultaneously across multiple cities. Their behavioral patterns are unlike anything we've seen before." Rebecca nods, already analyzing the new data. The mathematical models show complex interconnections that even she hadn't predicted. "They've created something unprecedented," Rebecca says, her voice carrying the same focused tone she uses when explaining complex investment patterns to boutique clients. A distributed consciousness emerging from the collective conditioning of thousands of operatives, each one thinking they're acting independently, but actually following patterns created by the modified Oracle code. Victoria, who has been quietly observing, steps forward. "Like how my customers would unconsciously coordinate their shopping patterns in the boutique?" she asks, showing surprising insight. "Exactly," Rebecca confirms. "Human behavior naturally falls into patterns. The conditioning programs just made those patterns more pronounced, more predictable." On the main screen, Rebecca brings up a global map showing the activation of sleeper agents. Each point of light represents an operative whose conditioning has been triggered. The pattern they form is beautiful in its mathematical complexity and terrifying in its implications. They're not just activated, Rebecca realizes, studying the emerging patterns. They're forming a neural network, each operative acting like a neuron in a vast distributed brain. The modified Oracle code isn't just controlling them, it's using them to process information in ways we never imagined possible. Agent Torres immediately begins coordinating with international teams. "How do we counter this?" she asks. Rebecca's mind races through probability calculations, her fingers dancing across multiple keyboards as she accesses different systems. "The same way we mapped their behavior in the first place," she replies, "by understanding the mathematical patterns underlying their collective consciousness. Through the command center's windows, they can see FBI teams mobilizing above ground." Rebecca's quantum encryption device continues processing data, identifying new patterns in the network of conditioned operatives. Each activation, each response, adds new variables to her equations. "The boutique," she says suddenly, turning to Victoria. "We need to use it one more time." Her former boss raises an eyebrow but nods in understanding. The store's carefully designed layout, its precisely calculated customer flow patterns, had always been more than just retail psychology. Sarah catches on quickly. "Like how you use the cafe to map their surveillance patterns." Rebecca nods, already typing new commands into her system. "Every space where humans gather creates behavioral patterns. By understanding those patterns, we can predict and influence how this network of conditioned operatives will respond." James moves to coordinate with tactical teams, but Rebecca stops him with a raised hand. "Not yet," she says, studying the mathematical models. "We need to let their network develop further. The more complex it becomes, the more predictable its behavior will be. Chaos theory. Larger patterns emerge from seemingly random interactions." Alex's voice comes through again, his tone urgent. "Rebecca, the network is expanding. Their operatives are starting to influence civilian behavior in their areas. It's like the conditioning is spreading through normal social interactions. The implications send a chill through the command center." "Of course," Rebecca says, understanding, dawning in her eyes. The Oracle code was originally designed to map social behavior patterns. They've turned it into a virus, one that spreads through human interaction itself. She brings up new models, showing how the conditioned operatives are unconsciously influencing the behavior of people around them. Through secure feeds, they watch as the pattern spreads across cities worldwide. Each interaction, each social connection, creates new nodes in the growing network. The mathematical beauty of it is undeniable, even as its implications become more disturbing. Rebecca Chen, the mathematician who hid in plain sight as a luxury boutique manager, faces her greatest challenge. She created the Oracle code to understand human behavior. Now she must use that understanding to prevent it from transforming humanity itself into a vast, interconnected neural network. As dawn fully breaks over Chicago, her quantum encryption device continues processing data, searching for patterns within patterns. The quiet store clerk who outsmarted criminal organizations now races to solve an equation where the variables are human consciousness itself, and the solution could determine the future of human individuality. In the command center, Rebecca stares at the global map of activated sleeper agents, her mind processing patterns within patterns. The network of conditioned operatives has grown more complex, their collective behavior creating mathematical sequences she's never seen before. The quantum encryption device on her wrist pulses with increasingly urgent data. It's not just spreading, she announces, fingers flying across multiple keyboards. It's evolving. The modified Oracle code isn't just connecting their operatives, it's optimizing their collective behavior. New patterns emerge on the screens, showing how the network is spontaneously reorganizing itself, becoming more efficient with each interaction. Agent Torres leans forward, studying the data. Like a neural network that's teaching itself? Rebecca nods, pulling up more complex behavioral matrices. Exactly. Each conditioned operative acts as a node, processing information through their interactions with others. But the real danger isn't in what they're doing, it's in what they're becoming. Through secure feeds, they watch as the pattern spreads through major cities: Moscow, Beijing, New York. In each location, the network of conditioned operatives grows more sophisticated. The Oracle code was designed to map human behavioral patterns, Rebecca explains, her voice carrying the same focused tone she uses to explain investment strategies to wealthy clients. But they've turned it into something that actively reshapes those patterns. Sarah, observing from nearby, notices something in the cafe's customer data. Look at this. She points to a screen showing analysis of customer interactions. The way people are moving, interacting, it's changing. Even normal civilians are starting to follow these new patterns. Rebecca studies the data, her expression grave. The mathematical implications are staggering. The conditioning isn't just affecting their operatives anymore, she realizes. It's creating a cascade effect. Each conditioned operative unconsciously influences the behavior of everyone they interact with, creating new nodes in the network. It's spreading exponentially. Her quantum encryption device calculates new probability matrices, each more concerning than the last. James returns from coordinating with ground teams, his tactical experience reading the situation clearly. We're seeing similar patterns in every major city. People are starting to move and behave in synchronized ways, even without direct contact with known operatives. The implications send a chill through the command center. Victoria, who has been quietly analyzing boutique security footage, speaks up. The customer flow patterns in the store. They've changed completely. Everyone's moving in perfect synchronization, like a choreographed dance. Rebecca nods, drawing up new mathematical models. The boutique's carefully designed layout is now revealing something unprecedented in human behavior. They've created a quantum neural network using human consciousness as processors, Rebecca explains, her mind racing through calculations. Each person who comes in contact with a conditioned operative becomes part of the network, processing and transmitting information through subtle behavioral changes. It's beautiful, mathematically speaking, and terrifying in its implications. Alex's voice comes through the encrypted channel, urgent with new data. Sis, the network's processing power is increasing exponentially. It's not just sharing information anymore. It's actively solving complex problems. The collective intelligence is growing faster than any AI system we've ever seen. Rebecca's fingers dance across her specialized keyboard, bringing up new behavioral matrices. The patterns show how the network is optimizing itself, eliminating inefficiencies in human behavior and replacing them with mathematically perfect interactions. They didn't just steal the Oracle code, she says quietly. They completed it. They've turned it into exactly what it was designed to prevent, a system for optimizing human behavior on a global scale. Agent Torres immediately begins coordinating international response teams, but Rebecca stops her. Standard tactical approaches won't work, she explains. The network will see them coming. We need to think mathematically. She pulls up the original Project Oracle code, studying its fundamental algorithms with new understanding. Through the command center's windows, they can see the effects already spreading through Chicago's streets. People move with subtle but unnatural coordination, their behaviors unconsciously synchronizing. The mathematical beauty of it is undeniable. Humanity organizing itself with perfect efficiency. The boutique's layout, Rebecca says suddenly, turning to Victoria. The way we designed it to map customer behavior. We can use it to understand how the network processes information. She begins typing rapidly, accessing years of stored behavioral data. Every luxury retail space creates unique behavioral patterns. If we can understand how the network is modifying those patterns, Sarah catches on quickly, like how you use the cafe to track their surveillance teams. Rebecca nods, already implementing new algorithms. Every space where humans gather creates mathematical signatures. By analyzing how those signatures are changing, we can map the network's processing patterns. James moves to coordinate with tactical teams, but Rebecca raises a hand. Wait, she says, studying the emerging patterns. The network isn't just processing information, it's optimizing itself based on resistance. Any direct action will only make it stronger. Her quantum encryption device pulses with new calculations, showing how the network adapts to each attempt to stop it. Through secure feeds, they watch as the pattern continues to spread, city by city, person by person. The mathematical elegance of it is breathtaking. Human consciousness organizing itself into a vast, distributed computing system. But with each new node, individual human unpredictability dims just slightly, replaced by optimized behavioral patterns. Rebecca Chen, who spent years hiding her genius behind a retail counter, faces a mathematical entity of her own creation. The Oracle code, designed to protect human individuality by understanding behavioral patterns, has been transformed into a system for eliminating that individuality entirely. As morning traffic begins to flow through Chicago's streets with unsettling precision, Rebecca's mind races through calculations. The quiet store clerk who outsmarted criminal organizations now has hours to solve an impossible equation. How to stop a self-optimizing network that grows stronger with every attempt to fight it, before human consciousness itself is reduced to perfectly predictable mathematical patterns. Disengage Section 7's tactical teams immediately, Rebecca commands, her voice carrying an urgency that makes Agent Torres pause. Through the command center's screens, they watch as the network of conditioned operatives continues to spread, each new interaction adding nodes to the growing collective consciousness. Every direct confrontation makes it stronger, Rebecca explains, fingers flying across her specialized keyboard. The network doesn't just adapt to resistance, it learns from it. Each tactical response we've launched has only optimized its behavioral patterns. Her quantum encryption device pulses with new calculations, showing how the collective intelligence grows more sophisticated with each challenge. Sarah, studying the cafe's surveillance feeds, notices something striking. The customers, they're starting to mirror each other's movements, even when they're in different locations. Rebecca nods, pulling up new behavioral matrices. The mathematical patterns show how synchronized behavior is spreading through normal social interactions. The Oracle code was designed to map natural human behavioral patterns, Rebecca explains, her voice carrying the same patient tone she uses with confused boutique customers. But they've modified it to actively reshape those patterns, creating a self-optimizing network that spreads through simple human contact. Through secure feeds, They watch as cities worldwide show signs of the spreading synchronization. People move with subtle but increasing coordination, their behaviors aligning with mathematical precision. It's like a virus, Agent Torres observes, but instead of infecting cells, it's infecting human behavior itself. Victoria, who has been analyzing boutique security footage, speaks up. "Look at this," she says, pointing to customer flow patterns from the past hour. They're not just moving in sync, they're optimizing their movements to maximize efficiency. Even the way they browse merchandise has become mathematically perfect. Rebecca's brother Alex comes through on the encrypted channel. "Sis, the network's processing power has surpassed our highest projections. It's not just coordinating behavior anymore. It's starting to solve complex problems that even quantum computers struggle with." The implications send a chill through the command center. "They didn't just steal the Oracle code," Rebecca says, studying the evolving patterns. "They completed it in a way I never imagined possible. Each human consciousness acts as a quantum processor, connected through subtle behavioral modifications. The mathematics are beautiful." Her voice carries a hint of awe despite the dire situation. James returns from his latest perimeter check, his tactical experience reading the situation clearly. "The synchronization is affecting our own teams now. Even trained operators are starting to show signs of behavioral alignment." Rebecca nods, her calculations confirming his observations. "We can't fight it directly," she announces, pulling up the original Project Oracle algorithms. "But maybe we don't have to." Her fingers dance across multiple keyboards as new possibilities form in her mind. The network grows stronger by optimizing human behavior, eliminating unpredictability. But what if that's its weakness? Sarah catches on quickly. "Like how you used chaos theory to map customer behavior in the cafe." Rebecca allows herself a small smile. "Exactly. The network's strength comes from creating perfect patterns, so we give it patterns it can't optimize." Through her quantum encryption device, Rebecca begins implementing new algorithms. "Every space where humans gather creates behavioral signatures," she explains. "The boutique, the cafe, even this command center. We've been trying to prevent the network from accessing these patterns, but instead, we let it in," Victoria finishes, understanding dawning in her eyes. "We give it so many patterns to process that it can't optimize them all." Rebecca nods, already typing commands into her system. "Not just any patterns. We give it the most chaotic, unpredictable human behaviors possible." Agent Torres watches as Rebecca's plan takes shape on the main screens. "You're going to overload it?" she asks. "Not exactly," Rebecca replies. "We're going to remind it of something the modified Oracle code forgot. Human behavior isn't meant to be perfect." Through secure feeds, they watch as Rebecca's new algorithms begin to take effect. In the boutique, carefully designed customer flow patterns suddenly become unpredictable. The cafe's usual ordered routine dissolves into controlled chaos. Each space under their control becomes a generator of mathematical uncertainty. The network optimizes behavior by finding and reinforcing patterns, Rebecca explains, monitoring the results. But human consciousness thrives on unpredictability. By introducing controlled chaos into the behavioral matrices, we're not fighting the network. We're reminding it of what it means to be human. Alex's voice comes through, again excited now. "It's working! The network's trying to process the new behavioral patterns, but it can't optimize them. The chaos is spreading through the same connections it used to enforce synchronization." Rebecca nods, watching as her mathematical counterattack propagates through the system. Through the command center's windows, they begin to see the effects on Chicago's streets. The unsettling synchronization of morning traffic begins to break down, not into disorder, but into the natural flow of individual human choice. The mathematical beauty of it brings tears to Sarah's eyes. Perfect imperfection. "The original purpose of Project Oracle," Rebecca says quietly, watching the network struggle with the concept of controlled chaos. wasn't to eliminate unpredictability in human behavior. It was to protect it, to understand it well enough to preserve it. Her quantum encryption device pulses with new data as the network begins to transform. James watches the tactical feeds with growing hope. The conditioned operatives, they're starting to break free of the synchronization. Rebecca nods, her calculations showing how the network's attempt to process controlled chaos is disrupting its own behavioral modifications. Through secure feeds, they watch as the effect spreads. Globally, the mathematical precision of the collective consciousness begins to dissolve, not into chaos, but into something more beautiful. The natural, imperfect patterns of individual human choice. Rebecca Chen, the mathematician who hid her genius behind a retail counter, watches as her understanding of human behavior saves humanity from perfect efficiency. The quiet store clerk who outsmarted criminal organizations has found the ultimate solution. Not in fighting the network, but in reminding it of the beautiful imperfection it sought to eliminate. In the command center beneath Lower Wacker Drive, Rebecca watches as the network of conditioned operatives continues to transform. Her quantum encryption device pulses with new data, showing how the introduction of controlled chaos is spreading through the system, breaking down the enforced synchronization pattern by pattern. The network isn't collapsing, she explains, studying the mathematical models on multiple screens. It's evolving again, but this time into something different. Through secure feeds, they watch as cities worldwide show signs of change. The unsettling precision of synchronized behavior begins to dissolve, replaced by natural human unpredictability. Agent Torres reviews tactical reports from international teams. The sleeper agents are regaining their individuality. Whatever conditioning they were under, it's breaking down. Rebecca nods, her fingers dancing across keyboards as she monitors the transformation. The modified Oracle code was designed to optimize human behavior, to eliminate unpredictability. But by introducing controlled chaos, we've reminded it of something essential. Sarah, watching through the cafe's surveillance feeds, notices it first. Look at how people are moving now, she points out. They're still connected somehow, but not in that artificial way. It's more natural. Rebecca pulls up new behavioral matrices, showing how the network is adapting to the concept of imperfect patterns. Human consciousness evolved to thrive on uncertainty, Rebecca explains, her voice carrying the same patient tone she used to explain luxury goods to boutique clients. By forcing the network to process controlled chaos, we didn't just disrupt its optimization, we taught it the value of imperfection. Through her quantum encryption device, Rebecca monitors the global transformation. The network isn't disappearing. Instead, it's becoming something unprecedented, a collective consciousness that preserves individual unpredictability rather than eliminating it. The mathematics are extraordinary, she breathes, watching patterns evolve in ways she never imagined possible. Victoria studies the boutique's security feeds with growing amazement. The customer flow patterns, they're returning to normal, but there's something else there now. Like everyone's still connected, but in a way that enhances their individuality instead of suppressing it. Alex's voice comes through the encrypted channel, excited by the new data. Sis, you need to see this. The network's processing power hasn't decreased, but its approach has completely changed. It's not trying to optimize behavior anymore. It's learning from the chaos we introduced. James returns from coordinating with ground teams, his tactical experience reading the situation with practiced eyes. The conditioned operatives, he reports, they're retaining their enhanced capabilities, but their behavior is no longer synchronized. It's like they've learned how to be individuals again. Rebecca nods, studying the evolving patterns. The Oracle code was never meant to eliminate human unpredictability, she explains. It was designed to understand it, to protect it. By forcing the network to process controlled chaos, we've helped it rediscover its original purpose. Through secure feeds, they watch as the transformation spreads across continents. The mathematical precision of enforced synchronization gives way to something more beautiful, a network that enhances human consciousness without sacrificing individual choice. Every space where humans gather, Rebecca continues, gesturing to the surveillance feeds, creates its own unique patterns. The boutique, the cafe, this command center, they're all generators of natural human behavior. By introducing controlled chaos into these spaces, we gave the network something it couldn't optimize, the fundamental unpredictability of human choice. Agent Torres watches as her tactical teams report similar observations worldwide. So we haven't destroyed the network. We've transformed it? Rebecca allows herself a small smile. We've reminded it of what it means to be human. The mathematics of imperfection are far more beautiful than perfect efficiency. Through the command center's windows, they watch as Chicago's morning traffic returns to its natural flow. The unsettling synchronization is gone, replaced by the organized chaos of individual decisions creating collective patterns. It's mathematics in its purest form, the emergence of order from chaos, without sacrificing the chaos itself. Sarah approaches Rebecca, holding out a fresh cup of green tea, just like she used to serve every morning at the cafe. So, what happens now? She asks. The network still exists, but it's different, more human. Rebecca takes the tea, her quantum encryption device continuing to process the ongoing transformation. Now we learn, she replies, watching as new patterns emerge on her screens. The organizations that stole and modified the Oracle code thought they could perfect human behavior. Instead, they helped us discover something far more valuable, a way to enhance human consciousness while preserving the very unpredictability that makes us human. Victoria adds her own observation, her business acumen seeing the broader implications. Like how the best retail experiences don't force customers into patterns, but rather create spaces where natural patterns can emerge. Rebecca nods, appreciating her former boss's insight. James moves to coordinate with Section 7's teams one last time, but his posture is more relaxed now. The threat they faced hasn't disappeared, but it's transformed into something that no longer needs to be fought, only understood and guided. Through her quantum encryption device, Rebecca continues to monitor the global network as it evolves. The mathematics show something unprecedented, a collective consciousness that enhances rather than suppresses individual choice, a system that learns from chaos instead of trying to eliminate it. Rebecca Chen, the mathematician who chose to hide, in plain sight as a simple store clerk, watches as her understanding of human behavior helps create something entirely new. The quiet retail manager who outsmarted criminal organizations has helped transform their weapon into a tool for protecting the very unpredictability they sought to eliminate. As morning light fills the streets of Chicago, people move with natural grace, their patterns forming and dissolving in the beautiful dance of individual choice. The network lives on, but now it serves its true purpose, not to perfect human behavior, but to celebrate and protect the magnificent chaos of human consciousness itself. The epilogue unfolds in the renovated Mason & Pierce boutique 3 months later. Rebecca arranges a display of limited edition handbags, her movements still precise but now containing a natural fluidity that comes from true choice rather than mathematical calculation. The store's security cameras capture everything, but they're no longer just monitoring for threats. They're part of a larger network that preserves individual unpredictability. Sarah runs her cafe across the street, where the morning rush creates patterns that are beautifully, perfectly imperfect. Through the window, Rebecca watches as people move with natural grace, their behaviors forming collective patterns while maintaining their individual uniqueness. Her quantum encryption device, disguised as a luxury smartwatch, continues to monitor the network's evolution. The new security system is fully operational, James reports. still playing his role as the store's guard while coordinating with Section 7's ongoing operations. The global network they created continues to grow, but not through forced synchronization. Instead, it enhances human consciousness by celebrating its inherent chaos. Victoria enters the store, carrying reports that show record sales figures. "Your new customer experience algorithms are remarkable," she tells Rebecca, with knowing smile. "They don't just predict behavior, they enhance it while keeping it natural." Rebecca nods, appreciating how her former boss has adapted to knowing her store manager's true capabilities. Through secure channels, Agent Torres provides regular updates on the network's development. Criminal organizations worldwide are still reeling from the loss of their conditioned operatives, who have retained their enhanced capabilities but regained their individual freedom. The modified Oracle code, once a tool for control, now helps protect human unpredictability. "The mathematics are still beautiful," Rebecca explains to Sarah during their morning coffee ritual, "but now they describe natural patterns instead of enforcing artificial ones." Her friend nods, having witnessed firsthand how the network transformed from a threat to humanity into something that enhances it. Alex's voice comes through her encrypted channel, sharing new data about the network's evolution. "The collective consciousness is learning in ways we never imagined possible," he reports. "It's not just processing information, it's understanding the value of imperfection." Rebecca smiles, watching as customers move through the boutique, in patterns that emerge naturally from individual choices. James reviews the store's security footage with new appreciation. The tactical precision he was trained to look for has been replaced by something more subtle, the natural flow of human behavior creating its own perfect imperfection. "It's like a dance," he observes, "where everyone knows the steps but chooses how to perform them." Victoria approaches with a young woman, a new hire for the store. Rebecca recognizes the look in her eyes, the same mathematical brilliance she once hid behind a retail counter. Another gifted mind choosing to work in plain sight, helping to guide and protect the network they've created. "The best patterns," Rebecca tells her new colleague, "are the ones that emerge naturally from chaos." She gestures to the store's carefully arranged displays, where customers move in ways that can't be predicted, but together create something beautiful. "Our job isn't to control those patterns, but to create spaces where they can flourish." Through her quantum encryption device, Rebecca continues to monitor the global network's development. The mathematics show something unprecedented, a system that grows stronger through diversity rather than uniformity, that learns from unpredictability instead of trying to eliminate it. Sarah delivers afternoon tea just like she has for years, but now their ritual carries deeper meaning. Each small interaction, each individual choice, contributes to the network without being controlled by it. "You know," she says, watching, "people move naturally through both their spaces. Some patterns are beautiful precisely because they can't be perfectly predicted." As evening approaches, Rebecca performs her closing routine, each action both precise and naturally fluid. The store's mirrors reflect a space where mathematics and human nature have found perfect balance, not through control, but through understanding. The quantum network they created continues to evolve, spreading not like a virus but like consciousness itself, enhancing human connection while preserving individual choice. Rebecca Chen, the mathematician who chose to hide in plain sight, watches as her understanding of human behavior helps protect the very unpredictability that makes us human. As night falls over Chicago's Gold Coast, the city moves with natural grace, its patterns forming and dissolving in the endless dance of individual choice. The quiet store clerk who outsmarted criminal organizations has helped create something entirely new, a way to enhance human consciousness without sacrificing the beautiful chaos that defines it. And in the boutique's window, the designer handbags catch the evening light. Their geometric patterns a reminder that sometimes the most perfect mathematics are found not in enforced order, but in the natural emergence of patterns from chaos itself.